Pokemon Legends Arceus recently released on the Nintendo Switch, and as I've played through it and discussed it with others, I've heard a lot of good things about it, and also the graphics. But today, I wanted to take a closer look at the game and analyze its design and find the answer to the question, why is Legends so much fun, that runs deeper than it's different from prior Pokemon games. Also, I just like to talk about game design. And a quick spoiler alert, I will be covering some of the mechanics unlocked throughout the game up to the end of the last area. Pokemon itself should need no introduction as the popular series about a living collectathon. The mainline series of games features the player character that can explore a limited world and encounter said living collectibles in different parts of it. Legends keeps this aspect of the formula but adds 3 major things that have been completely or largely absent from prior entries. First, the game allows for omnidirectional movement in an open environment and allows the player to move the camera freely. Second, the player no longer needs to engage in battle to perform the other main mechanic of catching Pokemon. And third, when engaging in battle, the transition is seamless and takes place on-site instead of in a pre-made battle arena. So with the differences to the old titles established, what makes Legends so fun on its own? The biggest thing is that Legends has a good gameplay flow. That is, the player is almost always engaged or focusing on something. While moving around the map to accomplish larger goals, smaller immediate tasks fill up the empty space, from catching Pokemon to gathering resources. Avoiding Pokemon falls under this category too, as even though you can run right past them, the player still needs to be aware of the threat they impose. It would have been nice to have a map on the heads-up display though for a game so focused on exploration to show some of the nearby elements. For the main goals of the game, there are 2 of them. The larger first one you get is to complete the Pokédex. Unlike previous entries in the series, in Legends you not only need to catch a Pokemon, but observe it in other ways to finish its Pokédex entry. It's an interesting way to encourage players to take different Pokemon out for a spin. The sheer amount of Pokemon can make this tedious in the post-game when you're going for completion, but a number of the tasks can overlap if you plan ahead. For instance, you might make progress on 3 tasks at once by defeating a Water-type Pokemon with an Electric-type attack, being to defeat it with an Electric attack, and see the Pokemon that defeated it using that attack. The other main goal of the game is its story progression. The story and characters are average. To advance the story, you need to raise your star rank, which is done by filling out the Pokédex, making for some good progression cohesion. I myself focused more on the story and had to grind out some of the Pokédex to unlock new areas, but on the flip side, those who focus down the Pokédex will still get their star rank and can advance the story whenever they feel like it. In terms of content the game offers as a semi-open world game, one of the largest challenges the genre faces is filling the empty space with things to see or do. In addition to Pokemon and resources occupying most of that space, there are also a couple large collectathon side quests to reward the player for going somewhere out of the way, or being extra observant. Later in the game, when those things have been found, the ride Pokemon also allow for fast traversal, so you don't need to spend repeated long times in areas you just need to pass through. Speaking of the ride Pokemon, there are 5 of them. 4 are used for traversal and 1 for locating hidden items. Weirdeer and Basculegion mainly function as a speed increase, the latter also an unlockable ability to traverse on water. Braviary trades off speed for safety, flying above other Pokemon out of sight. Sneasler is an unlockable ability to climb most vertical surfaces. Among these rides, there are a decent number of quality of life inclusions. For instance, when Weirdeer runs into water, the ride will automatically swap to Basculegion. If you approach a cliff and want to climb, or begin to fall in the air, you can press A when prompted to summon Sneasler or Braviary respectively. You can also swap between mounts on the fly, and the selection waits for you to stop cycling between the options before changing directly to your decision. I do have a few design critiques on the rides though. First, while it makes sense for the rides to function as unlockable abilities to open up more of the world via progress, I was quite surprised to find that the player has no native jumping ability without a ride. Jumping isn't a requirement per se, but the world has enough verticality and small ledges that it immediately struck me as odd. Then, Weirdeer's jump is mapped to the same button as the dodge roll, which makes sense, but its run button is mapped to the one that makes the player crouch and slow down when not mounted. The ride configuration is set up so that while riding, the player can hold down the run button and just roll their thumb to press jump. But having the same button be used for crouching and running in different states creates a cognitive disconnect in control scheme. The controls for Braviary also struck me as a little limiting, as Braviary will make an initial jump in height once summoned, but won't increase in height again until the player touches ground. While I was initially saddened that I couldn't just fly to wherever, it makes sense that if you consider that if the player could just fly over everything forever, they'd have significantly reduced interaction with the game's core mechanic, and the sky itself is empty of engagement. Braviary's controls also make precision landings difficult, only able to dive at an angle or be dismissed and resummoned before hitting the ground too hard. Speaking of controls, most of them are well designed. The right shoulder button being used to aim is pretty common, with the left lending to a type of auto-aim. In the early game, I would commonly forget whether I had Pokemon or items ready to throw out and would waste a few Pokeballs trying to shake a tree, but keeping the selection of them between 3 buttons makes room for other controls. The sprint toggle is tied to pressing the left analog stick, and while this is fine, sprinting also has a stamina limit that ends your sprint when you run out and needs to recharge. But the stamina gauge itself is invisible to the player, which makes it hard to know when you're about to run out. This can make situations when you're running through a field and then suddenly need to run away from a Pokemon a bit hard to deal with, because you don't know if you're about to not be able to run. The controls that confused me the most were actually the ones that opened menus. The pause menu being on the up arrow is fine instead of the usual plus button, as swapping the two would put rides on a button that would require moving your thumb off the left analog stick, requiring you to stop moving to activate alternate movement. The pause menu itself is also finely tuned, with the ability to access your items and Pokemon at the same time, and this includes a lot of intuitive options in a condensed space, like nicknames and evolution. Swapping between the tabs uses the back shoulder buttons instead of the front ones though, which diverges from main gameplay. This allows the player to swap between inventory and key items using the front ones, but it threw me off a few times. The X button isn't used in the menu, so it would have been nice for cycling between menu pages to remain on the front shoulder buttons. The front ones are also used to cycle pages in the storage box. Speaking of the storage box, having the autosort use a default order is nice, as it's fast and consistent. The other two menus the player can open are the Pokédex and Map. These most likely have their own hotkeys due to the frequency the player checks them. The map is heavily tied to the core mechanic of exploration, and also allows the player to fast travel. While it's convenient to have open quickly, it could just have easily been a tab on the inventory menu, especially since that remembers the tab you left off on. I also found it a little annoying that the button to open the map didn't close it again on a second press, instead opting the player to zoom out. This makes it a bit trickier to open the map for a quick glance, and is also completely unnecessary. While it makes sense that the plus and minus buttons would zoom in and out, they're a bit out of the way on the controller for repeated use for that, and the back shoulder buttons are already being used to let the player zoom. Your quest log in Legends is also found via a button press off the map screen. The quests do tie most closely to the map as it shows where you need to go for your current one, but it would have been nice for the quests to also occupy a tab next to the map on the pause menu, as I often found I didn't need the map for a quest but still had to navigate past it. On the note of quests, players can accept any amount, but can only have one active on the map at a time, including both story missions and side quests. This prevents the map from getting cluttered with icons, but it's annoying to start on a quest I've had for a long time and then find out I walked past the progression point while out exploring and missed it while I was in the area. The other separate menu is the Pokédex. As mentioned, the Pokédex system in Legends is more involved than previous games, and there are many options by which you can complete an entry. A lot of these options can be met just by playing the game, by catching or KOing Pokemon, by seeing a specific move that wild Pokemon will commonly have, or that's signature to your own. The Pokédex's tie to core gameplay does make it nice that it has a hotkey, and beyond that you can open directly to an entry of a Pokemon that you're looking at. However, this is the only way to open directly to an entry, which makes it difficult to navigate to a specific Pokemon you want to finish an entry for when you're looking at your team or pastures. On the pastures, it is nice that they have a mass release feature, as it's quite cohesive with the ease of catching a lot of Pokemon. Another mechanic to look at is team building. As you progress through the game, you will frequently encounter Pokemon of higher levels than your current roster, sometimes even of the same species. New to Legends, the old stat system that used hidden effort values accrued over time has been removed. This means that there is no mechanical value to using the same Pokemon for the whole game without using the grit items, only sentimental value. This also keeps a level of challenge, as player stats no longer scale much faster than AI stats, giving the game a stronger sense of difficulty. Individual values now also change to affect starting stat boosts that can be maxed for any Pokemon later with grit items. By this design, players are free to swap out their team frequently without consequence, allowing them to catch higher level Pokemon directly instead of grinding or swap in any new ones they want. This is especially nice later in the game as the player amasses a lot of alpha Pokemon that come at higher levels and have better move access. On the note of alphas, they serve a mechanical purpose of optional mini-bosses that reward the player with either XP or a powerful ally. Their design makes them easy to differentiate from normal Pokemon, in addition to a unique tune that plays when the player is near one. Alphas also serve as content for the player to return to when they're stronger. Additionally, every naturally spawning Pokemon has an alpha variant, which doesn't limit the player's options. Past that, the unique moves alpha Pokemon can have can still be tutored onto non-alpha Pokemon, so the player doesn't miss out on anything if they invest in non-alpha Pokemon instead. Past the alpha Pokemon are the noble Pokemon, which provide a form of boss fight gameplay different from the rest of the game, yet mirroring the player's learned controls. The noble Pokemon fights require the player to throw bombs at the boss while moving and rolling to dodge attacks. While the arena type design of the fight is unique, arcing throws and dodging attacks are both gameplay elements that the player already naturally gets used to while catching other Pokemon. The specific fights also have unique designs that progress in difficulty. Cleaver is the first boss and as such is basic. He has 2 attacks, a dash and a spin, both of which are choreographed well in advance. This introduces the boss battle mechanics in an easy manner. The Lilligant fight introduces attacks that have to be dodged through, not just evaded, and the player is warned before the fight that this is a mechanic they'll need to utilize, but they're not told what form it will take. In the fight, the form this attack takes is a ring that begins to expand across the entire arena, and the thickness of the ring is smaller than the distance the player can move with the dodge roll, cluing in the player that this is the attack they'll need to roll through. The Arcanine fight adds environmental hazards and uses the intuitive knowledge that you shouldn't step in lava to establish them. The Electro fight ramps up the difficulty further by creating an environment where the player needs to move constantly constantly, but it falls a little short design-wise as the player is not warned that the homing attacks in the fight cannot be stopped. As such, this may lead the player to needlessly get in harm's way to try and get rid of it, either by rolling through it or trying to crash it into Electrode. Finally, the Avalugg fight changes the scale of the boss, and instead of maneuvering about the boss and looking for openings, it challenges the player's ability to dodge that they've honed from all prior gameplay until they can unload attacks back. One of the most noted issues people have called attention to is the visuals of the game. The world's rendering suffers quite a bit, and there are a few visual bugs. While this is true, the game does at least make it passable, and what it lacks in grand visuals, it makes up for in close ones. The models and animations of the Pokemon look great, and take the focus during combat. The sound design isn't anything special, but the use of sound to denote nearby Pokemon like Alphas and Shinies is a great use of spatial awareness. The final mechanic to cover on my list is items and crafting. Legends does a good job of giving the player what they need to form a solid gameplay loop. The player's most frequently used items are the Pokeballs, the materials to craft which also being the most commonly found ones in the world. The player even gets access to Ultra Balls via quest rewards before they unlock the ability to buy or craft them, making the early ones you get far more valuable. When you do unlock the later Pokeball recipes, the crafting material requirements still allowed the earlier Pokeballs to have a place until you begin to amass enough money to start buying them reliably. And that's all I have to talk about today on Legends Arceus. The game has a lot going for it, and like every game, has a few flaws, but also like most games, the potential for improvement does not impede the fact that what we have is fun. The core gameplay loop and flow of the game make it very engaging, and the smaller scope of the game's design relative to prior ones allow what was made for the game to shine.